You're listening to the Market People podcast from LMF, with special thanks to Novidea for sponsoring this edition. LMS founder and CEO talks to Paul Richmond, Novidea's head of customer success, about the importance of data in delivering excellence in customer experience in the London and specialty insurance market.
So, good morning, Paul, and welcome to the Market People podcast series. It's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Roger.
It's always good to have our friends from Novidea involved in LMF activities. Firstly, congratulations on your new role, Head of Customer Success.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, because how long have you been at Novidea now?
So I've been at Novidea for 3.5 years now, which time has flown. So it's almost a bit of a microcosm of my career. The last 3.5 years, I've done 3 kind of different jobs, all of which have kind of led me to this role, which was I kind of spent some time in product manager, spent some time in the technology kind of department, working with the CTO and kind of the operating model, spent some time working with clients, and then the kind of the role for the head of customer success kind of came up, and worlds collide, and there we go.
Yeah, excellent.
So, no, but I think it's really appealed to me in terms of you have to wear a few different hats. I think that's what's really important about that type of role. I have to kind of stay interested, and you can't be one lane for all things. So it's really interesting.
And this has obviously come about based on the years that you've been in the London market.
Yeah, I suppose. I think a lot of it's kind of grounded in the change management side of it. I kind of always tend to put that hat back on whenever I can, and it seems to serve good purpose. Thinking about things from the people perspective, from the technology perspective, the process perspective, which isn't as sexy as most people care about, but having a good process that's grounded and allows people to kind of anchor themselves to something allows you to then kind of ultimately then work closely and more efficiently with the clients, and obviously then let the technology kind of support that process and enhance it. So I think, a lot of it's grounded in that. Obviously, I've kind of worked across the retail kind of sector when I was with Gallagher's. I worked with Price Forbes from a wholesale perspective and the US side of the market. And then working with DXC kind of in the product space around, kind of AI tools and kind of working closely with a blueprint, it kind of gave me a real viewpoint across the value chain. And so, ultimately I then said, right, I'll stay with the dark side and stay with the technology. But it's a really exciting role, and it's glad to kind of take it on.
I'm really pleased for you. I think we met when we were both in change roles in the market many years ago. So the years tick by, but it's great to see you in a role that you're really enjoying at the moment. So today in this podcast, we're going to be looking at the importance of putting data at the heart of the topic and the area that you're focusing on now, which is customer success, and making sure that data is actually central to that customer success strategy.
Sure.
One of the challenges in the London market has always been determining who is that customer. That's been one of the. Sure. So when you're trying to do this, getting it right is obviously important, and understanding who that customer is, or understanding who you're probably focusing on as the customer is important to get right from the start.
Absolutely. I think I talked about this at one of your customer events, one of your LMF events, around customer centricity, and it's still a valid question. And a lot of people will kind of say, well, who's left and right of me in the value chain? Who am I directly dealing with outside of my organization? You've then got the kind of the business users themselves, from a technology perspective, actual users of your application, your software. You've also got the senior management, how it's messaged, how it's viewed, how it's supporting the bottom line, so they have a different kind of viewpoint on how an application is being used. So they're a customer. And ultimately then you've got the end policy holder. So again, going back to why I kind of really love working for a technology firm is, you kind of get to focus on all of those, and you can't just go, well, I'm only going to think about that person, because you get the others wrong.
Yes.
And ultimately technology or customer success is about driving value for its users. So whether that's the user itself, but ultimately so that they can provide a better service to the end customer. So we're always thinking about our users doing a service or using our product for the end customer.
Yes.
And that's, sometimes you feel a little bit removed from that end customer, and it's about kind of how can you get as close to them as possible. But ultimately that's kind of, you need to kind of have all four of those in mind, I think, when you're thinking about who your customer is.
Yeah, excellent. Data and data management, I mean, they're some of the key areas. They're probably the most talked about topics at the moment at LMF, along with generative AI. We work in a very data rich industry. We're extraordinarily lucky. We hold vast amounts of data. Probably, I think it's fair to say, I don't know whether you would agree with this, that as an industry, we've probably not taken full advantage of that position. What data, effectively, do you think is underused or not understood in our industry by carriers, brokers, MGAs?
Yeah, so I take it back a step. So, data led, if we talk about customer success, data led customer success isn't necessarily something new. It's inherently kind of there in many companies, whether it's KPIs or OKRs, whatever you decide to call them, and everyone is tracking the bottom line. They're always, everyone's tracking how can we do things better with the same amount of resources or more profits with the same team, etc. So that kind of side of things internally isn't kind of a new concept. I think where I see we fail across the value chain is we have the data, but it's kind of turning that data into kind of knowledge, and then really importantly turning the knowledge into actionable insight. So there's a step that goes from converting that data into something we understand, and then converting what we understand into the user journey or whatever it might be, to then go, how can I make your job better? How can I improve the outcomes, the outputs? And I think that's the bit where we fail.
Right.
And give an example of that, and this is not just a current company working at brokers in the market over the number of years, and I'm sure you've got examples yourself. If you were to go into a broker, historically, you probably would say, tell me your top 5 clients by commission, by brokerage, off the top of their head. They know what that is. If you were to say, tell me your top 5 clients by operating profit, by profitability, probably don't have only the very small kind of group of people would know what that is. And so ultimately, are you actually driving the right behaviors? Are you driving the right culture? Are you looking at the right things to kind of have that holistic view? So that's kind of a very clear example that I have. As well, if I think about from a technology perspective, when I go back to that actionable insight, it's like I said, how can you inject that knowledge into the journey without the need for someone to kind of go away and go, I want to find this answer out. I need to go and find this report. I need to go a point in time to find an answer, when it should be more intrinsically within their process and go, this is what you need to know, to make this process better, or to help you talk to that customer. This is what you need to know. We know that because we do it all day, every day. And how do you inject that into the customer journey? I think that's where we're definitely getting better. And you talk about generative AI, which we'll come on to a bit later for sure. But that's helping, because it's more accessible. But ultimately, we can, if we've got the right technology, you can do that now. You don't need Gen AI to do that.
No, I mean, I think we've come so far. I remember doing a client profitability study probably about 25 years ago, and literally I had to interview everybody who dealt with a particular account. This was at Aon, at many accounts, but say one account, I had to interview how long the claims person on average spent on that account during the year and how long the finance division were working on that to work out the profitability of that particular client. Big revenues, but sometimes little profits. Nowadays, with the technology that we have available, and especially with Gen AI coming in, many of these things are much easier. And it's important that we have our data and our data sets, clean and in the right order in order to get the benefit of these new technologies that are coming in.
We'll come on to kind of some of the ways to do that, but there's more tooling that's now just out of the box, let's say, with your software provider, third parties integrating into your kind of tech stack. There are tools now that do that for you without you having to kind of go away and do something else, tell another application what you've done, who you did it for, how long. There's tools now that integrate to start to capture that insight. Unless your inherent software can just do it itself, plug for Novidea. But there's many third parties that you can integrate to help you do that.
Sure.
So it's a journey, but we've definitely seen a big improvement over the last kind of 5 years or so.
Yes.
But, it's definitely a journey that we need to be better at.
Yeah. So before we start looking at the specifics of data sets that might help inform a customer success strategy, what does a customer-centric view of business actually mean or look like?
Yeah, I think, again, for me, it starts at the top. It can't be bottom up in terms of a customer success strategy when we're specifically talking about data. It's very much, it's a strategy, it's a process, it's a culture. Are we putting the customer at the front of every decision? Are we putting their experiences and their user journeys and their interactions with us as a client or as a broker, as an underwriter, let's say, over the more traditional processes and metrics that we have kind of always monitored and thought was good. And so it's about kind of pushing that agenda to say, actually, no, we're focusing on the customer value.
Yes,
first and foremost.
Yeah,
and that's quite a big shift, and quite hard for a lot of companies to do. I'm sure you've got examples of that, but that's ultimately where it probably starts. And then some kind of tangible things around that. This is where data then really comes into the forefront of the strategy, because it's saying, right, what data are we collecting? What data is valuable to help me kind of create that 360-degree view of my client, my portfolio, my business, whatever it might be, and allow you to segment that so you can be more targeted in then how you treat those customers and how you add value and treat their interactions. London market, as good as it can be, still has a lot to learn from the retail market. Retail side of things, it's all about it's about customer retention. It's about, who did we not win?
Yes.
Why did we not get that customer? The cost of acquisition is so important that every kind of part of that interaction has to be understood and improved where it can be. Whereas, in London market, we know more complex, more specialty, built on relationships, normally worldwide, kind of clients. And so it's about trying to, for me, I'm always trying to say, what learnings can we take from the retail space and bring into London market around kind of the customer segmentation, and then making that data just accessible to its users.
And, talking about this, we're encouraging companies to focus on sort of data, best practices and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do to ensure that we adopt those best practices and behaviors? What should we be looking out for?
So I'm going to lean on my friends, which sounds very boring, but the Compliance, Governance and Oversight Council. So, these guys have done a lot of studies around kind of data usage, data hygiene, kind of what should we be doing when we think about data. Then there's a statistic that I was kind of researching the other day, actually, I thought was really apt for this, which was, and I'll read it so I get it right. So 60% of the data collected during one day loses its business, legal, or regulatory value by the end of that same day.
Wow.
So, what this is kind of saying is, unless you have the kind of correct hygiene kind of frameworks and methodologies and processes, that data loses its value very, very quickly.
Wow.
So we've got science there. And so that's really kind of jumped out of me. And I kind of was looking at kind of best practices of how you can kind of be better at doing that in terms of kind of data audits, kind of setting clear guidelines. Taxonomy is something we see a lot in our work, in terms of clients aligning a phrase, a term, so that everyone understands what that means.
Yes.
And it can often mean that a very small change of someone's perception of what a terminology means can have quite a big downstream impact of how you use that data, how it's calculated, how it may be used for other teams to kind of process against. So I think taxonomy is really important. And then they kind of, what we try to talk about at Novidea is kind of the data lifecycle. So what I suppose I mean by that is, understanding when something's captured, how is it used, and when is it kind of redundant? So kind of understanding almost like a policy life cycle. It's very clear that you kind of know when it starts, changes made, when it comes up for renewal, everything around that data needs to be obfuscated because of whatever regulatory reasons. And it's kind of the same with data, but kind of on a kind of a policy level for itself.
Right.
When is it captured? How is it looked after? Does it align to everything else that we are capturing and the taxonomies that kind of correct? And then when is that data no longer is it surplus to requirements? It's outdated, or we're going to use it for historical because it builds up a trend. And I think that's a really kind of important point to kind of for people to think about. And I suppose the last point from a data hygiene perspective would be when to move to a data warehouse, when to kind of have the analytics running across multiple areas, multiple teams, multiple portfolios, companies. We see a lot of companies merging with others. And so, data warehousing now is so important when you want to kind of take the next step up to kind of that kind of wider view of what you're doing with data.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot for people to be thinking about, and what I've seen in this particular area is lots of different market companies spending a lot of time, energy, and indeed, investment in trying to get this right, because it really is critical, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's we're talking about data from a customer success perspective. But this data hygiene kind of, let's say, kind of area it goes for all areas of your business. It's not just for customer success. It's for everything around the business. So it's kind of quite a core utility, I would say, a core utility to any business strategy around your data management, your data hygiene, etc.
So when it comes to metrics, what sort of metrics should be in place to ensure a good outcome to a customer success strategy?
So I thought about this, and actually it is different for every client. If we think from a technology perspective, a customer's onboarded, they will have their own North Star of why they moved to that technology platform. It could be they need to upgrade, they need to move to the cloud, security, accessibility. It could be they want to be able to deploy new products for new lines of business. It could be a number of different things, and they are different for everyone. So that, I think, it's really important to maintain the kind of that key objective and always kind of make sure everything's traceable back to that. When we then talk about kind of KPIs from a vendor perspective, and when I think about when we're kind of thinking about our customer success, yes, there's first and foremost, are they getting value out of the platform?
Yeah.
And that's quite hard to track sometimes, because a lot of it is at, let's say NPS, and going back to Net Promoter Score, which kind of feels very outdated now. But actually it still has a lot of validity when you're going, how are you using that feature? did you find the new feature easy to use? Tracking how they're using it with kind of different tools to go, how are they using our software?
Yes.
So there's a lot about how you're using the application and how you're getting value from it. And that's ultimately one of the kind of the key three principles of what customer success is.
Right.
My perspective, kind of take it one further, would be how can we kind of make the client more empowered to do things on the software?
Yes.
So we're in a lucky position, and one of the reasons I kind of moved to Novidea was the scalability and the self-service nature of the application. The core underlying features with the ability to configure your own business process on top of that. What that then comes with is making sure that the client is empowered to do that work,
right,
to understand how the software works, to configure their own business processes, not needing to come back to us all the time for small changes. We don't need you to come back to us.
No.
You can do, here's the tool set, here's how you do it, and kind of we want to support you in becoming more self-sufficient. And so that's one of our key drivers is, how can we get them to be as self-sufficient as possible, and then kind of peer review their work with them more as a partner, so they can build up kind of internal knowledge. And that's a really big metric for us. And we've spent a lot of time in what we call our knowledge management team.
Right.
Which I haven't actually seen in any other tech firm. Right. So it's a really nice kind of positive message that we've invested in a knowledge a knowledge team.
Right.
To basically their role is to go, how can we help you do more? And
really
empower you to do more as the end customer.
Yes.
And not feel like you need to come back to us every time you want to make a change.
Yeah.
Which, as we know, is a complete bugbear for every single client, for every technology platform.
Yeah.
So we've kind of addressed that head on. That's one of the key metrics, which is probably a little bit different to what most people would say in terms of the traditional KPIs and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Very interesting indeed. So Paul, how does a data-focused customer success strategy support a scalable operating model?
Sure. So I think, again, customer success and delivery kind of go hand in hand. We support the delivery process, and then once they've gone through hypercare and they're in production, we manage that customer. I mean, ultimately, we kind of see technology as a multiplier for change. So, how can we drive growth in an efficient way? How can we keep control of processes? How we can keep, flexibility, but also kind of be cost efficient. And the customer success team ultimately kind of catch that ball once the delivery is completed and we're managing that customer onwards. But when we talk about kind of data specifically, there's a few kind of things that we really look for when we're working with clients. It's one, we're cloud-based software, kind of absolutely number one. Many of customers kind of priority this now. Open API kind of architecture or infrastructure, sorry. How we're allowing them to connect to other third parties, how the data enrichment tools, kind of other vendors that support processes, even before you start to use that piece of technology. So kind of how you're kind of augmenting the data around the core policy system. How you can integrate, we talked about earlier, data warehouse. When's the right time to kind of have a data warehouse, data analytics? And obviously a number of vendors will do data analytics inherently within their software, but at some point you get to an enterprise state where the data warehouse becomes a requirement, and especially when you're dealing with different business units, kind of pulling different data sets together from different P&Ls, etc. That's a kind of a critical kind of turning point. But I think if we think about the data part of customer success, it's about having a data model that is flexible and allows the business to grow. So what we mean by that is, we're not creating incremental versions of the static data model when it first kind of landed, part of the delivery. What we're saying is, your business will grow, and in order to do that, you will need to capture data that you didn't capture before. And we want to make that process as easy as possible. We want to make adding kind of, let's say, enhancing the data model a business focused task and not a technical solution architect task, which is kind of is always been, you say data model, immediately you go, right, we need a solution architect. And what we're trying to kind of drive is that actually, no, the business ownership can understand what the data model is.
Yes.
And it's, if you want to capture more data, it's intrinsically within that model.
Right.
You're not having to create another whole version over here and try and align the two.
No.
It's a connected living thing. And I think that's a big shift. I've not seen that kind of around the market a great deal.
Interesting. And Gen AI must be playing its role in this.
It does. Again, when you look at it, the light's at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people, isn't it? Because it's not a new topic. It's been around for, InsurTech Insights conference, and the chap kind of gave his keynote, and he'd been working with machine learning for 2 decades.
Right.
And it really kind of penny dropped in my head a little bit, going, oh yeah, actually we have been dragging our feet a little bit here. But I think what the recent year or 2 years, which you'll have seen, it's just the accessibility to it is kind of, the technology is inherently still there. It's just now how we interact with that with that process and that kind of tooling, that technology. And where we're seeing clients, and I'd be interested to get your view, where they're kind of starting to get those specialists in-house, and starting to understand, what a large language model means.
Yes.
Prompting courses, how to ask the right questions so you get the right answers. That's really, really critical if you're then going to want to take your data strategy to the next level.
Yeah.
Which ultimately is then going to drive a better customer outcome, because you're doing better, you're doing more with the same data set.
Absolutely. In fact, we're hearing about this. We have our LMF Gen AI working group, which is made up of about 12 firms across the market, and they're all in sort of experimental mode, proof of concept, but starting to build these LLMs and working with all sorts of associates in order to try and make this work. But they're all focusing on developing these tools within specific areas of their business initially, with the view to obviously embracing them in the wider context over time.
And I think Hiscox released on LinkedIn early this week. They've done their first end-to-end terrorism process, using kind of these AI tools. I think it's Google that they've worked with. They're taking data, it's validating, it's qualifying it, it's going away, looking at the risk profile, looking at the kind of the pricing models.
Yes.
Here's your options. And off it goes. And it's really, it's great to see, because all it takes is one or two of these kind of big names to start to go, it's happened.
Yes.
It's not happening in the future. It's happened. It's here. And then everyone kind of starts to go, right, we don't want to lose out. So they kind of up their game.
Absolutely.
And then that's where the tech providers kind of have to go, right, how are we set up to support that? So we almost have to be one step ahead to go, what are they going to want to do?
You've got to preempt that. Yeah.
With the technology and these kind of toolings that are normally off, third-party tools. But how do we then work with those tools to kind of ultimately then going back to customer success, deliver that customer journey for the users?
Definitely. Exciting times.
Very much so.
So final question for you. Obviously, LMF's all about helping people in the market come together to learn, to develop, to network and collaborate. If someone's really interested in this particular area, where do they go? Where can they get more material, more insight?
Sure. So obviously, more than welcome to kind of drop me a note on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to kind of customer success advocates and people who care about, changing things for the good. I think Custify is a really good website. A lot of free material, a lot of free downloads. Talks about kind of a lot of the different kind of principles of data-led customer success as well, not just customer success. So you can be a lot of white papers that they kind of output. Also NICE, and capital NICE, a really good vendor that focuses again on customer experience and kind of how you're leveraging data for kind of the customer experience. So, there's a lot of really targeted companies and vendors out there now, I suppose it's really one can't do everything. So you kind of need to go, well, what's my main goal? What are we looking to drive? Is it kind of process? Is it customer experience? Is it kind of how we can do interactions with our customers more seamlessly? A lot of different angles to it. But yeah, there's Custify and NICE are two that I probably go and check out.
Well, we were keen to cover this in this particular podcast because it's probably not talked about enough, I don't think, this particular area. So it's obviously been great talking with you about this. One final question I've got for you personally. So when Paul's not doing his customer success work in the market, what do you like doing? Well, how does Paul relax?
I'm customer success manager at home. So how do my two kids get most value out of life?
Yeah.
How do I keep my lovely wife happy? We've got a third baby on the way in November.
Wow.
So it's going to be a busy household come Christmas with 2 dogs.
Gosh, that sounds like you're very, very busy. Busy at work, busy at home. But well, look, it's been great talking with you. Thank you so much for coming in and seeing us today and chatting. And we look forward to obviously seeing you over the next few months at the different LMF events that we'll be running, working in partnership. But thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks,
today.
Roger.
Thanks,
been great to talk to you.
Thanks.
LMF would like to thank Novidea for supporting this podcast episode. We hope you picked up some useful insights about data and customer experience. If you're not subscribed, do search for us on your normal podcast channel or on LinkedIn. If you're not already a practitioner member of LMF, sign up today at lmforums.com and be part of the insurance discussion. We hope to see you soon.